All right, guys, today we have a special guest in the house. We're pleased to welcome Matt Babcock of Babcock Hoops on the program. Matt's a former NBA and FIBA agent with over a decade in the sports management industry. Today, Matt runs BabcockHoops.com, a site on the forefront of all things basketball, including the upcoming NBA draft. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good, man. Doing good. So, first question for you. Assuming the NBA season resumes, who has the better chance to win the championship, the Lakers or the Clippers?
Well, hopefully the NBA season resumes, right? I would go with the Bucks, but if not the Bucks, I'm going to go with the Lakers.
Okay. We get lost Jay for a second.
We losing?
Back, Jay?
Yep.
All right, man, go ahead.
You up?
Already. Hey, Matt, we've seen the Bucks, Lakers, and Clippers separate themselves from the pack this year. So with that in mind, who you got as the fourth best team in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two teams that come to mind would be either the Nuggets or the Sixers. Obviously, the Sixers have had an up and down year, but I mean, I think as far as a threat in the East, they've got the most talent. And I mean, if the NBA were to resume playing, gave them time to get Ben Simmons healthy, and I mean that would be a team. If I were the Bucks, that's who I would be worried about. And then the Nuggets, I think they're sort of knocking on the door, with the Lakers and Clippers.
Okay, so to switch over to college basketball a little bit here, we know because of COVID-19, the season got cut short. We didn't get much conference tournament, and we didn't get an NCAA tournament. So without those two events, who do you perceive being the top pick of the 2020 NBA draft?
I think this year is interesting. There's a lot of parity towards the top of the draft, and I mean, I'm really curious to see the NBA draft lottery when I'm curious to see when they actually have it too. But I think this year's draft order is really going to potentially shake things up quite a bit. But the three guys that I have sort of pegged are all a little different. But James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, and Obi Toppin, those consistently seem to be my top tier guys.
Okay. Well, on that note, since you've laid out our top three, do you have two more players that you'd give us that would round out your top five?
Yeah, I'll give you more than three. But the first group would be those guys, and then not necessarily in this order, but I think LaMelo Ball's in there, Onyeka Okongwu, Denny Avdia, who am I missing? And Killian Hayes. I think that would be sort of my first group of guys, and after that, I think it kind of tears off a little bit.
Okay, so LaMelo Ball, the guy I want to bring up. In this draft, LaMelo is easily, I would say, probably the most polarizing name of the draft. So with that said, no college, no G League. He played overseas. Where do you see him getting drafted? I know you got him somewhere at the top, and why do you see him getting drafted somewhere in the top?
I mean, I think he's the best point guard in the draft, and so, I mean, there's certain teams that I don't think will mess with him just because he doesn't fit what they currently have as far as assets and their depth chart and whatnot. And, but I mean, I think teams like Detroit or Chicago, I mean, if they end up even in the top three, I think he'll be on the board, as a guy that they're heavily look at and can step in and be their starting point guard right away. And as far as breaking down his game, he's got legitimate size. I mean, I think they're trying to say he's 6'7". He's probably 6'6"-ish, but good size nonetheless, and really just has a knack to make plays. He's got the ball on a string, and just sort of a knack to make plays, for himself and his teammates. The negatives on him, I think, are physically he's not overly athletic. I think he depends on his coordination, skill, and size more he does his burst. And then taking that on the defensive end, I think there's going to be some concerns there too. He's sort of slight in his build and not overly athletic. He might get abused a little bit defensively early on in his career, but a good player that I'm excited about.
Yeah, we'll see how that turns out. Whichever team takes him, they're going to have to deal with a little side of LeVar, so we'll see. We typically don't have much insight on international prospects from our purview. So with that in mind, who you got as the best international prospect and why?
Well, I think there's two guys that are sort of at the top there. Is Denny Avdia from Israel. He's like a 6'9", point forward. Kind of in the Ben Simmons mold as far as a big guy that can handle the ball, make plays for others. I don't see him playing point guard. Like Ben's been playing with Philly, but he does some of the similar stuff. Really good to the hole. Deceptively athletic, and his shooting's coming around. with him. And then the second guy would be Killian Hayes, a French point guard that's currently playing in Germany, or he's not currently playing. He's currently on a team in Germany. Nobody's playing at the moment. But, and he's a big combo guard, a little bit more of a point guard than a shooting guard, but he could play on and off the ball, sort of in the mold of like a D'Angelo Russell. Those are the two, clear-cut top international players if you're taking LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton out of the mix.
Okay, I like that. So, due to injuries, the Warriors pretty much got a year off this year. This year, they're looking for the first time in a while, they're going to get a lottery pick once this is all said and done. So, with that said, what top player that should be in the lottery do you see fitting the Golden State system well?
Yeah, I mean, Golden State's in a unique situation, right? I mean, they've had this powerhouse team the last handful of years, and this has been sort of, a year off, like you mentioned. I think with their players coming back and being, at the tail end of their primes, they need to capitalize on that. I mean, teams, having a chance to win a title, doesn't come around very often. And so with that said, I think they need to plug in a guy that could contribute right away while also being like a long-term building block. And so I like to see them, get one of the big guys. I think James Wiseman would be perfect there. I also like Onyeka Okongwu. As far as like bringing in a guard, I think there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now. It'd be hard for a guy to step in, like LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards. I don't see that being the perfect fit. So we'll see. But I mean, a big guy to me makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think if, depending on how the lottery shakes out, I'd like to see them get James Wiseman. I think that would make a lot of sense. John Morant saw his stock rise tremendously last year after his performance in the NCAA tournament. Who is a player that could have seen a similar rise in their stock had it not been for COVID-19?
Well, I mean, the guy that, he's definitely not a secret anymore, and I have him ranked really high, is Obi Toppin. He's on everybody's board pretty high. I think the NCAA tournament, their team was so good. I expected them to have a chance to make a run. I think he would have, had a chance to solidify himself into like the, sort of the window and rankings that I have him in. I think that would be across the board if he had a little bit, of a bigger stage to do that on.
Okay. Now, in your opinion, you give us that diamond in the rough. What player that's going to be outside of the lottery that you could see possibly being an NBA All-Star?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at guys that are outside the lottery that have that much upside. You're talking about a high-risk, high-reward type guy. And the guy that I would peg as the one guy in that role this year would be Jaden McDaniels from Washington. He's 6'9", really thin build, but he's got so much upside. You can put it on the floor, create his own shots, potential to be a versatile defender. He's the guy, if it clicks, he can end up being a big-time guy. If it doesn't, I don't know. He might be playing overseas in a few years.
Okay. Jalen Green, I believe he's a top player in the ESPN 2021 recruiting rankings. He announced last week that he's going to enter the G League as opposed to playing college basketball. Is this something you believe we'll see more as time goes on, or is this more of a one-off?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the plan is, get 2 to 4 guys in there and see how it goes and build off of that. I mean, there's been whispers that, the long-term plan is to create their own division of having some, outlets for younger guys. I actually just got off the phone with Rod Strickland, who's a big part of all this. And they're getting after it pretty good. And I'm expecting this to be a trend that carries. And, it seems to be, the dialogue and the narrative changes each day. I mean, the NCAA, kind of came back and said they're looking at, open up endorsements. I think Australia is probably freaking out right now. Their whole plan is kind of getting shot down at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how it sort of progresses. But it seems like it's it's definitely creating a strong, aggressive market, with different outlets, creating some spots for high school players.
Okay, and so to piggyback off that a little bit, how long do you see us running the current system of 1 year out of high school until we decide to go back to straight out of high school for the NBA players?
I don't know. I mean, I think that conversation is changing quite a bit. Obviously, right now, with there being so much uncertainty with COVID and all that, I think the NBA is sort of looking at a lot of different options of changing things up. And, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I had heard, among NBA circles that, at one point it was, sort of considered to be a for sure thing that they were going to waive the age limit and all that. The last I had heard was that NBA owners were backing off that a little bit because the union need to make some concessions in order for them to do that. And so we'll see. I don't have a clear-cut answer for you, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty really with everything.
All right, Matt, last one for you. We have ESPN dropped the first 2 episodes of The Last Dance on Sunday. What did you think of the whole documentary so far?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, if you're a basketball fan, how do you not love that? And I saw that team play live. I think twice that year. It was my dad's first year working with the Milwaukee Bucks, and I saw them when they played in Milwaukee, and we drove down to Chicago and got to see MJ and Pippen and Rodman do their thing, and it was awesome. I mean, those guys were. I mean, Jordan specifically was probably about as influential on me than anybody or anything in my life.
That's awesome, man. All right, Matt. Well, once again, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Check out Matt at BabcockHoops.com, at Matt Babcock11 on Twitter, or under his name on Facebook. And be sure to follow his excellent basketball coverage through the draft and beyond. Once again, man, appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
You too, man.